Warning, the following video has flashing lights and also includes content that may be deemed inappropriate for some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The official geologist of the North American Dogman project, you have once again found your way into the Fox Den to awaken me from my slumber for another Dogman expedition. Ooh, that was absolutely delicious. I could sit here and feast all day. Yet William and myself do need to attend to something.
Stood up. I said, oh my god, it's a werewolf, and everybody in the car freaked out.
My creatures of the night, yes, I see. Even during the holiday season, you still venture into the Fox Den to be merry with Starfox and Midnight Lycanthropy. And again, tonight, we are sitting around the late night fire to burn the midnight timber with the North American Dogman Project science team. And guess what? William really could be enjoying much other things as he's on vacation, not even in the United States, but he's hanging out with us. So how you doing, man?
Well, I'm doing really good. Had a nice long vacation. Got a couple more weeks to wrap it up, but life is good.
Excellent, man. Here where I am up in the Northeast, you are not missing much except for very frigid weather. That is for sure.
That's true. That's true. I look at my my little weather app on my laptop every now and then and shows me the temperatures back home, and it does not look fun.
And why would you do that to yourself, man? Just put that out of like your mind, because yes, it is not. Last night, man, up here in Maine, it was no exaggeration. It was like -8 last night at some points in time, man. It was pretty burr. And we were heading back from Boston. I was with my stepdad and his fiance. We were down there seeing my little brother and my other little brother, all the nieces, Merry Christmas party. But on the way back, he's got an issue with, and a brand new tire, air was leaking. So he had to keep on stopping every, I don't even know, man, maybe 40 minutes. It's like an hour and a half drive, and he'd have to get out and pump up his PSI. But I had to,
Terrible.
Yeah. So I had to, unfortunately, you know how they say pee before you go. I was drinking a bunch of water and stuff and thought I could make it. Well, no. So I had to get out at one point in time to take a little venture near the forest line. And I was like, yo, dude, this is so cold right now, man. Brutal.
And that's how Starfox disappeared.
I know, right? Seriously. Obviously now, because of hanging out with you and everybody else, I'm aware of what's occurring, and now I always do kind of think that, because previous to really being updated on this topic of missing people and such, I would never really put thought into it. I mean, obviously, always growing up, certain spots in the woods would feel just gnarly to me, but also I had a huge imagination. I'm the type of kid, when your parents tell you to go outside and shovel, I would feel like all of a sudden the stormtrooper from Star Wars was going to be like walking through or something. So I always had this creative mind, but there was a spot that was near a pretty dense part of forest, and there was a trail you could walk in that would go down by this pond. Yeah, that'd be a decent description, but it wasn't a nice pond. It was like a swamp pond, and we would play hockey on it at points in time. But if you would go further in, there would be like tree houses that some of the older, really savage people in our neighborhood that, I don't know, I didn't really want to be around because they would just beat your butt because you were younger and they didn't like you, whatever. But either way, that part of the forest, I don't know if it was because, again, I just had this super creative mind, but it always felt like strange there. But again, I don't know, man. Like when you're walking out into the woods and you're by yourself, I feel like it's always kind of got that appeal, correct?
Yeah, it can definitely have a different vibe depending on time of year, time of day, maybe what's out there. That's for sure.
Have you ever felt, I mean, I know you've spoken about some of your encounters with us here for sure. And to the audience, if you are interested in hearing those, definitely go back and check out the playlist or the science playlist with William White. And actually, before I ask you this question, would you like to give yourself a plug, man? I mean, you're always here and such. And I don't know, I think you should just toss out what you do and what you've been up to, man.
Sure. Yeah, my name's William. I got my degree in geology, actually a really long time ago now, and it makes me feel really old to think about it. Um, and I've spent a lot of time out in the woods in the mountains of North America. I've lived all across our great nation. Um, I've actually spent a lot of time in South America too, which I visit fairly frequently now because my wife is from Brazil, and so we try to come here at least once a year, which is where I'm at now on vacation. And yeah, I currently live in the Ohio area, but I also have a home in Pennsylvania, and I grew up right on the border between Pennsylvania and Ohio, so I'm familiar with, that real rural, wooded, forested, almost mountainous region, where the Appalachians kind of begin in Pennsylvania. And there's a lot of just a lot of interesting things out there, a lot of sightings, a lot of experiences that people have. And to me, there's just a different feel to the woods out there. Some places to me just have a certain feel to them, and the woods there, they're old and they're dark, and I enjoy them a lot. But I always have this sense, kind of like you're talking about, of just a little bit of foreboding, and that may be in my mind, or it may be maybe because there's a lot of history there. There's a lot of different peoples who have lived there throughout the last few thousand years, and their cultures and histories and what they've experienced and brought with them.
That's great stuff right there. And that's funny because I ironically was going to ask you if you had ever really felt some vibe, even though, we know you've had some sort of encounters, but just outside of that, and boom, you just answered. And to
Yeah.
the audience, yeah, we are heading up to the Northeast, and actually one of William's stomping grounds. My stepdad's from Owensdale, Pennsylvania. So when I was younger, I went down there before, and they lived, I mean, they had neighbors and stuff, but there was like an apple orchard behind their house and pretty dense forest. And I remember we went down to an area where I'd never seen so many deer in my life. You could just roll down your window and feed them like carrots and such. And yeah, pretty interesting area. A lot of open fields and areas of forest and such. And I know Barb Hartman was just up there recently and had some pretty interesting potential interaction with something for sure. And do you
Cool.
remember that image of, might have been a video or a still cut video where supposedly people were trying to say it could have been a dogman or a juvenile Bigfoot or something bending over in the Pennsylvania area to supposedly pick up food? You must have seen that, right?
No, I don't know if I've seen one from Pennsylvania. The one I'm thinking of is that one from California that we're pretty sure is fake now. But
Yeah, this one's from Pennsylvania, man.
I don't think
I
I've
gotta
seen that
send it
one.
your way. Yeah, it was on Monster Quest and all kinds of things. Some of
Well,
the
if it
more
was on
recent
Monster
ones.
Quest, then I probably have seen it because I do remember watching the Dogman episode of Monster Quest before I got into this stuff. So,
Yeah, a lot of people are trying to say it's that, but then other people are saying it's definitely potentially a black bear. But some people are saying it looks apish, and other people are saying it's
mm,
got the physique of potentially a dog man. But it's interesting because that is probably one of the more famous videos or still shots
hmm.
from Pennsylvania. And I do know, obviously, you got the Shenango Valley Dog Boy, but as far as I
Oh yeah,
know,
yep.
yeah, Brian Seach, who's part of the North American Dogman Project and also Small Town Monsters, he's been on a few times, and him and his wife actually pretty much got to the point of being able to debunked the majority of that. I mean, you do still have a couple people that swear that they saw something different, but he and his wife were able to track down where this was occurring because they sat down in Shenango Valley at these little conventions and put up a sign. Has anyone seen the wolf boy? And someone's like, the wolf boy? No, you mean the dog boy. And he's actually not a dog boy. He's a real person. His family lives up here. So Brian and his wife were like, oh, okay, interesting. And they were able to do a little bit more fact checking. Yeah, and they did find out there was a family that had a child that had that basically werewolf syndrome where they're extra hairy.
Hirsutism, I think, is what it's called, where you grow hair like out of your face and your palms, your hands, and everywhere. Yeah.
Yes, and he had some sort of issue with his eyes that would cause, some red baggage and make his eyes look like they were red. And also his family did have bars on the window of his room in certain areas because they didn't want him to break out. And they would turn on like a light outside that had like a red kind of tint when he'd go outside, I guess. And he would apparently run around kind of animalistic, but we are talking about a child that, obviously had some sort of issues and such. So
on top of
his behavior, could look a lot different to somebody else's behavior and not understanding that, hey, this child obviously is dealing with things. So you have that aspect where they were able to prove that. I mean, this boy definitely looked like that. But then you have a couple other women that claim there was some people doing some sort of black magic and that they saw actually something that they swear was a difference from the Shenango Valley dog boy. But again, is that something just because they were so scared that they overthought it or what,
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm glad that they dug into it and did some research on it. That's good research, good reporting, and good science right there, not just taking it word of mouth, but really looking into it. So, yeah, because I remember hearing that story on Dogman Encounters Radio on YouTube, 8 years ago or something like that. So that's cool that they looked into it more and we have a little bit more idea of what's going on.
Right. Isn't that awesome? And Brian, like I said, and his wife are part of the North American Dogman Project. They've known Jody for a very long time and part of Small Town Monsters. And yeah, that's the type of, like you just stated, beautiful research and type of approach people should have to it. I mean, They obviously felt like there was some sort of, truth to what was occurring, but you can't just jump right into everything, being cryptid. So yeah, I just figured you would like that right there for sure.
Yeah, no, that's a cool update. No, so but with this other Owensville or Owenstown incident you were talking about, what's going on there aside from just that well-known picture?
So are you getting a chance to look at that? Did you look it up?
Oh, I'll pull it up right now.
Yeah, just type in Pennsylvania, like Bigfoot looking or juvenile Bigfoot. I mean, like I said, some people say Dogman, but yeah, it's strange. I can't fully remember if it's an actual full entire clip or it's just like some still shots that like go in sequence. But yeah, it would be really interesting to see your thoughts on that because I don't know. I definitely try to specialize in prehistoric and modern day predator behaviorisms, but I don't really know the most potentially about biogenetics of how those things would, like how that would be moving. I'm not an ape specialist. I'm not a bear, body specialist. I know how bears act and I know what their behaviors are going to be. But like I said, I don't understand necessarily the ratios of the arm to leg lengths. I mean, that's what our biologists and, people such as yourself, are able to kind of tell me about.
Yeah, I'm not finding that picture, unfortunately, just through doing some quick searches. But yeah, I mean, Bigfoot or Sasquatch was always, said that one of the key features of its gait and how it moved was that it doesn't walk like a human. I mean, it walks upright, but our feet from our heel to our basically your toe joints is rigid. It's composed of a bunch of little bones and joints, but those joints don't like flex and move like your finger joints or your elbow or your knees. They're held pretty taut and in place by a bunch of tendons and muscles. And apes, on the other hand, they have a mid-tarsal break. And the mid-tarsal break is flexible. It's a joint for them. It's a movable joint. And so instead of this rigid arch like our feet are supposed to have, theirs actually can hinge in the middle. And, that famous Patterson film, highlights that, when you look at the whatever you want to call it, Bigfoot, the man in the costume, whatever. I think it was a real Bigfoot. When you look at the feet, you can see them actually hinge in the middle as it walks. So the foot is bending upwards in a way our feet can't do. So that's proposed as being one of the big signatures of how a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot would walk, which is obviously different from us. And gorillas and chimpanzees, their feet act in the same way. But as far as like Dogman, of course, the Dogman that I really think is the Dogman has that digitigrade slip joint type of ankle and knee, a dog's leg. Some people call it the backwards knees. It's just if you look at a dog's hind legs, that's how they're built, right? The ankle is much higher, and so it gives it that backwards knee look. And the knee itself is not a knee like ours with like a patella, a kneecap. It's more of a slip joint, which is kind of similar to how like an old style pocket knife, not a locking blade pocket knife, but more like a Swiss Army pocket knife, how that joint works on those knives. Just that's the what's the slip joint means. But yeah, so I'd like to see that picture at some point, or video if it's a video.
What if I told you I just found it while you were doing
brother
thing, man?
Send it over.
I'm listening right there. Great stuff. It was in the Denver Post, and it's from Pennsylvania. I'm trying to send it to you right now, my guy. But yeah, no, what you were just saying right there is so interesting, and that's what I mean about really just trying to figure out what it is that we're actually, trying to potentially deal with right here. And it should be popping through to you right here in our chat, man. And you should be able to, boom, right there.
Let's see here.
Like I said, it's older, but it's like one of the ones from Pennsylvania. It's the best thing I've ever seen from Pennsylvania, claiming, but I don't know enough. I'm not saying I buy that, but I'm just saying that's probably the biggest.
Let's see. I saw it pop up, but I'm not good enough with Skype to see where would that show up.
So if you hit the little three,
there's our chat. I found it
right there. Bang.
Yep. Oh yeah, I have seen this picture. Yeah, you're right. That is really well known. And yeah,
the hell is that, man?
That doesn't look like a black bear. Black bears, they can be pretty long-limbed. I saw a long-limbed black bear in Louisiana. Actually, they're really rare down there. But it had an orange collar on its neck, and so unless they had been putting collars on Dogman, which would be fascinating, it was definitely a black bear. But yeah, to me, the way that hump in the back,
right,
how straight the leg is, I don't see any triangular ears. I'm more leaning towards like a young Sasquatch or some sort of an ape. I wouldn't go. I wouldn't go with the Dogman. The legs don't look right for a Dogman, and I don't see a tail. I know some people say they see them without tails. So that's not necessarily a giveaway.
Man. People mix it all up in the same pot right there. So I definitely agree with you for sure that it's definitely something, man. And I would lean towards what you just said too. If anything, it's Sasquatch, man, for sure.
Yeah, I see almost a deltoid, a shoulder muscle there that looks like it's broader than it would be with a bear. To me, that's pretty primate looking. That I'm throwing it in the camp of a baby Sasquatch, yeah.
And people just sleep on that, man. Like you said, it's well known, but I don't think it gets enough like attention, because you have ones that are pretty questionable that are probably hoaxes that get the attention, which is maybe why. But then that right there, man, is pretty legit. I know people have looked at it and said there's no rendering or any sort of editing to the photo and stuff, and there's no sort of even cleaning it up, meaning like, say you can send me a image from your trail cam, which is a real image, but it might be too dark, and you might be like, hey, StarFox, can you just lighten this up a little bit? Which means then it's still edited. But there's a difference between looking at something and seeing someone actually put Photoshop in there or something, or if they just change the contrast to lighten it up. But that means the photo's been rendered still a little bit, but none of that has been detected on that right there. It's just a straight up trail cam image. So again, Pennsylvania is one of those areas.
Yeah.
I don't know, man, if I'd be walking around in a freaking suit, bro, in the woods, dude. Like, you're gonna get shot up, correct?
Yeah, I mean, Pennsylvania is there's a lot of old growth forest there. There's a ton of hunting. It's in fact
Yeah.
the Pennsylvanians call it brown is down season. Basically, they're it's hyperbole, I think, but anything brown that's moving in the woods will get shot. They love hunting deer, and but there's a ton of woods and mountains. I mean, I don't know if a lot of people understand that the whole center part of the state is just Appalachian Mountains going up to the New York border. And, the Appalachians go through New York, through Vermont, through New Hampshire, into your home state of Maine. I mean, it's a huge mountain range. And Pennsylvania has tons of valleys and hollers and peaks. And I mean, it's an eastern state. It's a New England state. It's a colonial state. I mean, it's part of the original 13 colonies. But
Poconos too, correct? I mean, we went on those. Those
yeah,
mountains
I
were
think
gnarly.
so. Yeah, I think the Poconos go into Pennsylvania. For being such an old state and a developed state, it's actually still got a ton of wild areas. And if there was one like northeastern state, well, New York as well, where it'd be really easy for things to hide out. Pennsylvania and New York, they've got a lot of space, even though they've also got a lot of people. I would not doubt that a population of Sasquatch or Dogman or something else could survive, on the sly in some of the more remote areas for sure.
Agreed. Well stated. And we're talking about, New England in general. I mean, Maine's the most forested state per capita in the United States.
Yeah.
So pretty much, obviously, you got some areas in New England that are, more colonized. But again, like we've spoken about, people like to live near each other. So yes, any sort of area that you're going to have your congregation, but then you're going to have a ton of forks too. I mean, we have Portland, which is called like a mini Boston up here. And I mean, we have Bangor, and there's other bigger cities, but there's also areas that are pretty, widespread. Like, for example, Turner, when people were having those issues with that strange, like looking cryptid canine thing that was eating their livestock back in like 2006. That's a pretty open area where, your neighbors might be 5-10 minutes away. It's not necessarily something that if nefarious things are happening to you and you just run outside and scream, there's probably a chance no one hears you.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, shoot, New Jersey, when people think of New Jersey, they think of like, Newark and the big metro areas and being close to, Baltimore and Philadelphia but there's the Pine Barrens there. There's apparently, I've explored New Jersey very much. I've just been across the river from Philadelphia, but there's apparently quite a bit of just vast forest land in, a big city state, which, basically people don't understand that about the United States, especially like Europeans and, people who aren't Americans or people who have never left the big cities of the U.S. Even the, biggest, most famous states like California and New York and, Massachusetts, they've got a lot of woodlands, a lot of, kind of untamed land in a lot of ways,
Yes, that is very true, man. Great stuff. And people just don't realize that. And like you said, New England's super old school. And
yeah, as old as any part of the U.S. as far as, European colonization. So
right. And I do have a couple interesting encounters from Pennsylvania. I mean, I've been trying to look away and update my book when I'm able to, but man, it's so funny, dude. People are like, "Hey, are you ever gonna release our episode?" It's like, dude, yeah,
it
of
takes
course,
time.
but
You're a one-man show,
thank you, man. It's kind of frustrating sometimes because, of course, I'm gonna release it, but then, I mean, I don't think they're doing it to be like, mean. That might just be their personality to be like that, spot on.
Yeah.
But
Or they just think it'd be cool to hear themselves on YouTube,
which
that
is
could be too.
fine. Just make your own podcast, though, right, dude? Like, if you want to hear yourself talk that much, that's cool. But I have right now, no exaggeration, probably 25 hours of stuff to keep working on. I purposely do that, but people don't understand. I mean, there's people that also wait for episodes. Like, I wish, but someday, right?
Yeah. Well,
You know how it is, man. Things take time, like with editing and with anything. I mean, I could put out I could pull season 3 of The Witcher and just totally bomb my stuff, but I'd prefer not to.
We don't talk about season 3.
Man, I know it destroyed me. But in Pennsylvania, with some of these encounters in here, did you want to hear? Because we'll probably have time to dive into 2 of them. Would you like to hear
Sure.
older ones, or would you like to hear a newer one or medium-based ones?
Throw out the newest one you got. Let's take a gander at that.
Cool. Well, get down to the good old bottom right here, because I did finally get it broken down into proper areas. All right, the most recent one that we do have here at the North American Dogman Project, that as far as we know is as legit as we're able to verify, is July 4th, 2022, 11 p.m., Evansburg State Park, Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. A young couple is sitting by a creek watching the stars. As they're enjoying the beautiful sight, they suddenly see 20 to 30 feet away something that looks to be an enormous smoky gray wolf, and it seemingly had glowing yellow eyes, large pointy ears, a massive mane, and also these strange human-like lanky arms. It began standing up on 2 legs and slowly walking towards them in the creek. Quickly standing up and bolting back to their SUV, the couple begins to drive off, and as they're calling the local PD, they then hear a disturbance behind them. Later on, they are informed that their campsite was found torn to shreds, and some sort of bloody claw marks were all over their tent, as well as enormous strange tracks around the creek.
Huh. Well, that's a good story. And the crazy thing about that is I'm looking up Montgomery County, and it's in the southeastern part of the state. That's a pretty well-developed, populated part of the state. That's not the rural Appalachian Mountains side of things, or the western, Rust Belt type state, side of things. That's the more built up, like Philadelphia area. So that's, and the county itself has a pretty decent sized population. That's a fascinating encounter to have in such a urbanized part of the state. And then to have some of the, like you said, the tracks and the destroyed property, that's it gives it a little bit of credibility. Kind of have to go with their story, but that's pretty wild. For just 2 years ago.
That's what I'm saying. And again, like you just hit it spot on. I mean, as much as we're able to, until we can find somebody that was involved in the PD department at that point in time or something, I personally did not get a chance to speak to any police officers. I spoke to the couple, and like you said, to an extent, and us here, until we can, figure out fully, we do have to take their story, but they seem pretty legit and pretty straightforward. And I mean, again, it wasn't just one-sided. You have 2 people. Again, they're in a relationship, so obviously they're going to take their back. I'm not saying, it makes it fully 100% credible, but again, you do have multiple witnesses this point in time. And what they did say, it doesn't surprise me. That would seem to be something the PD would say. They didn't really specify on the size of the tracks. They just said they found strange tracks and bloody claw marks, or your tents were ripped apart. They kept it pretty vague, but enough where they knew what the heck they had just seen,
Yeah. It's interesting to, think about if they left bloody, claw marks on their property, where the blood came from, since obviously it didn't harm them. So it must have been feeding or doing something before it, came upon them. So.
Right. And that's what I was wondering too, because that is actually something else in Michigan that Deputy Chamberlain had spoke about. He literally speaks about this once, doesn't talk about it again because people decided to start trolling him and he just had more important things to deal with. But he was the one that arrived at the cabin in Luther, Michigan. And this is a pretty old encounter. And he speaks about it on Monster Quest as well, actually. You see his face, but he found bloody slobber all over the cabin. But also it did look like it potentially was trying to chew in through the door. So that's what I was going to say right here. Did it cut itself, and that's what the bloody
Yeah, it's
slobber was?
possible.
And same thing with over their tent while it was raging out. Did it cut itself on something? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, shoot, I was doing the dishes the other day, and I was trying to scrape some, cheese that had hardened on one of the plates off using my fingernails, and it was hard enough that it got up under my fingernail and started to bleed.
Brutal.
So I wonder if Dogman ever has that problem.
Well, that's just what I was going to say, man. I mean, it's honestly just a logical question. I mean, if they didn't really see it, bleeding anywhere, and it didn't look like it was eating anything, it looked like it was just chilling watching them. But who knows? It could have been, like you said, eating at that point in time. It just rang that bell in my head with what Deputy Chamberlain had said, because that was just another encounter with like the strange, bloody, like kind of claw marks and slobber everywhere. So
Yeah, it's a shame it wasn't collected as evidence and tested. It'd be interesting to see, but.
right. Well, so actually, Deputy Chamberlain did speak and say that I don't know what the direct department was called. It's pretty much it had something to do with the state, but they came in after he had made the call in, and once they arrived, he was able to leave the scene. But he said when they followed up with him, they found the same tracks and everything that he had said, but it led off into the forest too. So they definitely were able to get some sort of slob samples, and they said it was unknown canine. But again, they kept it vague to him as well. But that is actually a pretty solid case right there. But again, he didn't get his hands on that DNA. No one else did it. It was just told to him by this state forestry or whoever is to deal with that,
Yeah, it always seems like, it gets passed on to some other agency to deal with, and the
right?
local cops never hear about it again or never report on it again.
Exactly. And he doesn't speak about it again, but it spoke enough to put his face to it, man. And like I said, he's got his, deputy badge on and everything. And again, this doesn't mean just because somebody's an officer, they're more reliable than someone such as William or myself or somebody that is homeless down the street. Doesn't mean they are. But I'm just saying, when people are like, oh, how come no one puts a face to their story? Well, the guy did it, and he wore his badge and stuff. So
yeah, that is a pretty unique thing. It doesn't seem like it happens very often. I always got the feeling that, bigger departments or departments that maybe dealt with this stuff more often had some pretty strict protocols about how to address it, how to refer to it, how to evade it. So, maybe he just wasn't aware of the protocols, or maybe there weren't any protocols in his department because they never had to deal with anything like this before. That's just a theory I've had, but it does seem to be that. Well, shoot, I remember back years ago, I stumbled across police officer who was saying that they actually had codes for these things, that they, when they were talking on the radio, if they were referring to a Bigfoot, they'd call it a brown cow. And if they were referring to a Dogman or werewolf, they'd call it a black dog.
Makes sense, right? They've got code names for everything else.
Right. So if you're a department, say in the hinterland of Michigan, where maybe you see a lot of these things or get reports on a lot of these things, and you're dealing with, Michigan Game and Wildlife or the U.S. Forest Service a lot, you may just always kick it over to the other agency, or you may have your own protocols about how you address it and deal with it. But I'm sure it's all to minimize it, and get as little attention as possible when it's a very credible encounter, maybe with some good evidence. You know what I mean? So it's probably the best we can hope for is that some little department that never deals with this stuff happens to have to deal with it, and then they, kind of in ignorance, come out publicly and talk about it like this guy did. That would be great if we could have more of that.
Great observation right there. I never even thought of that. And as far as I know, Luther, Michigan, we have a couple encounters from there, but it doesn't really seem like a big area. And I mean, this was also back when Monster Quest was ripping around, man. So what was that, 2004? So I mean, we're talking.
Yeah, and that was before the Dogman thing really popped off. That was, the internet had been around for over 10 years by then.
Mm-hmm.
But and so of course the Beast of Bray Road had come out in the early 90s, and there was, but it didn't feel like Dogman and these werewolf sightings was really coming to the mainstream, and a lot of people were being exposed to it, that far back. That seemed to really, happen around the I don't know, 2012, 2013,
Mm-hmm.
2014 time period. So yeah, maybe these departments just weren't used to dealing with it,
Makes a
And
ton of
I
sense.
do think that with some of this stuff it is cyclical, and I don't know why, but it does seem like there will be a wave. Like 2016, there was a wave of Dogman sightings all across the country. It was like everywhere. The only thing in 2018 that really stood out, was the German Shepherds getting slaughtered up in the Cleveland area. That was pretty vivid. That wolf thing that was shot in like North Dakota or wherever that was. It was a
Mm-hmm.
weird
Mm-hmm.
wolf, but I don't think it
Montana,
was a
right?
dogman. Montana, yeah. I don't think it was a dogman, but it was a weird wolf, and that one stood out. And but a lot of the sightings seem to have tapered off by then, and it feels like maybe it's starting to pick up again. Um, but yeah, it does seem a bit cyclical. So that may have just been a dry spell where people weren't really encountering these things for whatever reason for a while.
Totally makes sense right there. And just straight up bizarre stuff for sure. And it's funny you said that as we're about ready to let you roll, but I'm going to read you one more. Yeah, I had found out about Jody and the NADP through Monster Quest. And that literally, then I found out about Linda. And that's how I
Oh yeah.
decided to start diving into all that right there. All three of those were like boom, 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 because I saw Linda on a Monster Quest too. And I was in high school, man, at that point in time, like 11 teen,
Yeah.
dude. So,
Fortunately, she
um,
passed away last year, I think. So
yeah, unfortunately, it stinks. I would have loved to be able to link up with her and chat because she
yeah,
was
that would have been
awesome.
cool to do an interview with her. I'm sure she would have too with you. She seemed to do interviews with a lot of people. So
She was so awesome, bro. Like she's probably one of my favorite people that I've never got a chance to meet, dude. But yeah, Monster Quest, man, like you said, literally showed me all that. And just recently, in the past like 5 years, when I just saw that it came all out on the YouTube channel and History Channel, I was able to just like watch them all again. And I actually missed a ton of stuff because I was so young when my mind was seeing it before that I
hmm
was like, oh wow, dude. And that's when I actually, even though I'd seen it before, I remembered then seeing the guy I just told you, Deputy Chamberlain, and I didn't remember that the first time through, and I was like, "What the heck, dude? That's insane."
yeah, no, it is. Once you're like at a point where you can start to say, hey, maybe there's something to this stuff. It's like an eye-opening experience where you start to look at the world differently. It's cool.
Right?
So
So true, man. And this last one right here is a more relevant, newer one too in the time scheme. It's April 23rd, 2022, 3 p.m. Knox and Mixon State Park, yuck, Bucks County, Pennsylvania. A woman is
yeah.
hiking through the forest when suddenly, around 40 to maybe 50 yards away on the top of a ridge, she sees what looks to be an enormous, dark brown, shaggy, wolf like creature with glowing eyes standing upright on two large legs, staring right back at her, shaking her head to make sure she was actually witnessing what she was. Sure enough, as this creature began letting out a human like scream and howl, she became even more mortified to realize this was actually occurring. The woman quickly turns around and bolts back to her nearby parked car. And as she is driving away, she can see this strange creature standing at the tree line, still growling at her as if to say, "Get the F out of here."
Huh. Yeah, that's a good sighting right there. The human animal scream is an interesting one. You'd think if someone was just basing it off of werewolf movies, they might just say it was a wolf howl or something. So, but
Mm-hmm.
then you do hear that a lot of times the howl or scream that they emit is described as being like almost a human scream mixed with an animal noise. So that's
Right?
interesting. I I wish that she gave a little more details on its size and appearance,
Mm-hmm.
but still a cool encounter. And once again, Bucks County, that's eastern Pennsylvania. That's fairly urbanized. It's not too far from a
Wow.
lot of the big cities, and so. But Jody told me that they've had several sightings in the city of Cincinnati. Because we both live near Cincinnati.
Yeah,
Um,
Germantown, man. Right in there in the
well,
middle of the barber
Germantown's
shop.
kind of
Remember that?
rural, but no, we're talking about in the actual urban city of Cincinnati,
Oh,
and
damn.
So yeah, a city or rural, that doesn't necessarily make a difference somehow with these things. One of the things we theorized, Cincinnati has these huge drainage tunnels that drain into the Ohio River, keep things from flooding, and and we've theorized that maybe they use those tunnels to kind of get around unseen, unnoticed when they want to, kind of like the Ninja Turtles or something. But who knows? It is.
I love how you
Yeah.
just said that, man. Because
Yeah.
before we let you
But
go, I was actually diving into some Japanese encounters with a friend of mine slash host, and same thing, right in the city of Tokyo, man. They were literally being seen like in alleys and stuff, and I was like, I bet you they're using the sewers and stuff to like come up and about, man. And when you had just said that, that's what just popped into my head. So
yeah, yeah. Well, it makes sense. You're gonna adapt in the modern world. Coyotes have learned how to adapt and live and succeed in big cities, and they do just fine in the woods as well. Um, So it makes sense that if these things exist and they're going to survive in a world where humans are doubling our population every like 30 years, they're going to have to learn how to, get around in the environment we create.
great stuff, man. And same thing with red foxes, man. The majority of red foxes actually are in urban areas. And when I was with my little brother a few months ago at night, when I was just working on some stuff, all you could hear was this insane like howling and stuff. And you're like, dude, what the
Yeah,
heck?
foxhounds,
It's a
they're
fox.
they're creepy. They're creepy. That's a creepy noise right there.
Actually, on a funny note, dude, it has nothing to do with what we're talking about. But my little brother just texted me back. He's like, "Yeah," he goes, "because just always remember, technology that's smart isn't actually that smart. Because on the iPhone now, it supposedly just figures out when you're supposed to use your battery and charge it, and I don't think I trust that."
Hmm.
So, so I just figured to get a kick out of that. But awesome,
Yeah.
man. Well, you're a legend, dude, and thank you for always sitting down with us. Is there anything else you would like to touch base on or talk about before we let you get back to your wife and enjoying your vacation, man?
Uh, you know, just I want people to, especially if you're not like terribly familiar with the outdoors and enjoying the outdoors, always be careful out there, but don't let these stories and the what if situations keep you from enjoying yourself outdoors. Make sure to go out and touch grass, as the kids say, experience nature, take a hike, but do it wisely. Have some form of protection. Take your dog along, take a friend along, but enjoy it. It's a beautiful planet we've got. There's all sorts of cool things to see, and we shouldn't let these stories and experiences scare us away from enjoying it.
Very well stated, my friend. And couldn't have said that better because, yes, we still got to enjoy stuff. And like you said, touch grass because everyone's all scared about a cryptid coming to get you. But in actuality, man, I mean, you could walk outside, trip and fall, and break your nose down at the end of the stairs, and that's at the end of your existence. So,
Yeah,
you know,
you're much more likely to get hurt driving your car than you are hiking in the woods. So,
right?
just gotta
I mean, things happen, obviously, but
measure
yes,
the
like you just
risks.
said. Have you ever seen that show, actually, on a funny note, that is the most bizarre ways that people have been unalived, that it's actually based off of cases? I think it was on, well, remember they used to have a station that was like the man station or something like that? It was
Yeah, yeah. I
ridiculous.
think, are you talking about 1,000 Ways? That was big
Yeah,
when
there
I
you
was
go.
younger. Yeah.
Yes, and just some of the ways, like I said, you see it. So people are all worried about getting ripped apart by Bigfoot and Sasquatch and the Dogman and all this. But man, people are slipping and falling in their shower, dude, and breaking their
Oh
neck.
yeah.
And yeah, so there's plenty of ways that
Ridiculous
you
ways of
can.
going. Yeah.
Yes, dude, almost as if it's like a real life Final Destination where you're like, dude, how that person just has some
Yep.
bad luck. That's so funny. But all right, man. Well, again, like I said, I appreciate you, dude.
No problem. I enjoy it all. Talk to you in a couple weeks.
Ooh, you legends, you. Thank you to everyone that did make it this far tonight in the video. If you do enjoy my content, please like, comment, subscribe, and feed the algorithm. I will see you very soon.